Hello, historians. In this podcast, we will review some contextual information, meaning background information, regarding the history of documents B and D in your Unit 2.4 notes. Before we go over this history, please take the time now to go ahead and read the following 6 questions you will have to answer for this document. Once you're done reading those 6 questions, come back and restart your podcast. Now that you've read the questions and know what you should be looking for, let's go to the top of document B. It's extremely important to always read all of the information you're given for a document. That includes any notes or any bullet point information on the document or the authors of the document. Let's take a look at the information provided at the top. This document is an official notice sent to the 13 British colonies. It is advising the colonist that there is a requirement to follow the 1765 Stamp Act. This document was created by the British government of 1765. Now, if you don't know what the 1765 Stamp Act was, let's take a look at the note. The Stamp Act was a law passed by the British Parliament and Prime Minister, so the British government, in 1756. Remember that Britain at this time has already experienced the Glorious Revolution, and therefore they are now a constitutional monarchy, meaning that a king and queen still exist in the country, but the king and queen do not have any governmental power. They are merely just symbols. They're there to shake hands and smile and hold babies, kind of more like celebrities. The real governmental power now lies with Parliament, which is a group of elected government representatives, and the power also lies with the Prime Minister, who is basically the person in charge of Parliament. Now, this act, meaning law, act is another word for law, this act, the Stamp Act, exacted revenue from the 13 British colonies by imposing a stamp duty, meaning a tax, on all paper items and documents. So pretty much this notice down here is telling the colonists that they are now required to pay a tax for any paper item that they buy or use. As a result of this law, regular stamps for mail, paper, playing cards, and literally any other paper item now needed to have a tax paid by the colonists before the colonists would be allowed to use the paper item or even buy the paper item. If we take a look at the actual notice created by Parliament, we can see that Parliament has provided a message. The message is written in Old English, and so some of the words are spelled very differently from how we spell them today, but we can pretty much understand what the message is saying. All persons indebted for this paper above 12 months are once more requested to make immediate payment to prevent trouble. Let's take a look at the next side of this document. We can see here a skull and some bones, usually depicting kind of like a negative feeling of punishment or death. And it says, hereabouts will be the place to affix the stamp. Now that I've given you some historical context, some historical background on what the Stamp Act was, who created it, and who was supposed to follow the Stamp Act, go ahead and answer the Show You Rock questions for document B. If you need some additional historical help, on Google Classroom, I've placed a link for an additional video on the Stamp Act and also for a short article that you could read on the Stamp Act. Again, these 2 additional sources are optional, so you by no means need to use them. Once you're done completing the answers for document B, go ahead and scroll to the next portion of your notes, which is going to be the notes for document D, and we'll go over document D there. All right, let's take a look at document D. Again, before you go ahead and work on document D, please be sure to read the 5 Show You Rock questions on your own in order to identify what exactly you should be looking for. Once you're done reading those 5 questions, go ahead and restart the podcast. All right, so for document B, according to the information at the top, this document was created and circulated in a local colonial newspaper. So this is an image that the colonists basically created and put into their newspapers and were basically passing around throughout all of the different cities and homes in the 13 British colonies. If we take a look, it is a circulated image basically showing an angry mob of colonists who got a hold of a tax collector. So it looks like we can see the angry colonists here and our tax collector here in the center. The authors or creators of this image that was put into the newspaper were known as the Sons of Liberty. The Sons of Liberty was the name that patriots gave themselves. Okay, so now we know that the people who created this picture are basically showing us patriot colonists who have gotten a hold of a tax collector. Note, many redcoats, loyalists, or other British officials often fell victims to the anger of colonial mobs. So this note is important because even though we don't know exactly who this tax collector is, we do know that he might be a redcoat, meaning one of the British soldiers, a loyalist, one of the colonists that supported the British government's demand for taxes, or some other British government official. Now that's important to know because we already know from the Unit 2.3 notes that patriots like these patriots right here definitely did not like redcoats, loyalists, or British government officials. Now that we've talked about some of the historical context, some of the historical background information on this image called Tar and Feathering of a Loyalist Tax Collector, go ahead and pause the podcast in order to answer the Show You Rock questions for this document. If you need some additional support, I have also provided an additional optional video on tar and feathering and also an additional optional reading on tar and feathering. If you don't need to use those optional additions, feel free to skip them. If you were assigned Document A for homework, please also make sure that you complete Document A. We can see Document A is located at the top of the sources packet, so it's also at the top of your notes. If you're not sure if your period was assigned Document A for homework, please make sure to read the post on Google Classroom to see whether or not your group or period was assigned Document A as well. Have a great weekend and see you guys in class.